men of the 60s. Florida's fighting Gator football. The great plays on offense, the big hits on defense. Southeastern Conference football, the way it was meant to be played. Now, here's your hosts for the look back at the men of the 60s. Head coach Ray Graves and the exciting television voice of the Gators for the decade of the 60s, Dick Stratton.
Welcome, everybody, to the Ray Graves Sunday Football Show. It seems like I've said that before.
Yes, you have, and this really is something. We started out in black and white. Now we wind up here in living color.
It just seems like we've only missed a couple. It seems like it was last Sunday we were together again. I tell you what, it doesn't seem like 60 years, but it's going to be a good time for all of you men of the 60s, and we want to thank David Houts, who does the University of Florida video. And of all, you've got to compliment Gene Ellenson. Don't leave that to me. Mr. Defense, one-time offense. And
that defensive record of the 60s, I think, will stand a long time. Only points scored against the Gators average in those 10 years was 7.8 points. That's going to be tough to beat. And also, but Gene was the first one I hired, and when I don't think I would have taken a job if I hadn't gotten Gene to come with me and join us here at the Gator country. But certainly we had a lot of excitement too, Dick, doing those Sunday shows. We were tough to beat on Sunday.
And Wayne McDaniel, we thank you very much for being part of this as we present memories of 30 years ago. Ray, 9-2 season, great offense and great defense.
Right. This was a game, somebody said, what's the most exciting game meant more to you in the 60s? I would have to say this personally was the big one for me, and certainly coming in from Georgia Tech and my old boss up there, I want to make Coach Dodd proud that he didn't make a mistake, recommend me for the job, but this was an exciting game. I can remember after it was over that the fans in the stands, I don't think the Georgia Tech fans could believe they had lost, and the Florida fans weren't sure they'd won.
Well, it was that. The rest of the season was exciting, too. He won 9 football games, and Gene Ellenson's team held the opponents to 7.8 points per game, and that's still the best in Florida football history. As they say in modern times, let's go, let's roll the video. Let's enjoy some of the highlights. This is the Georgia Tech game. Bobby Dodd Jr. here, Coach Graves, playing against his daddy, throwing to Don Deal, but it was pupil against the professor. Bobby Dodd had to be one of your greatest moments, and what a way to start your season at Florida.
Without a doubt. This certainly was a great drive. Took nearly 8 minutes in the fourth quarter, going down to the last seconds in the game, and of course we're going to see that great run by and pitch out by Liberatore to Lindy Infante.
And it came down on a 4th and goal, and there was no doubt what you were trying to do, and here's that great performance that they're still talking about.
Now this is a great pitch. Certainly Larry Liberatore was one of the greatest little option quarterbacks of all time, and at 138 pounds was certainly a great little athlete in those pounds. In the area, I was going for 2.
Oh, the fans were the one that convinced you. They were hollering 2, 2, 2 before you threw up your 2 fingers. Tell me about this play.
Well, this play was the easiest one I ever had to call, really, Dick. Like you say, the fans called it, the players called it. I had to give them a chance to win this ball game over 5th or 6th ranked Georgia Tech. And there's John Macbeth juggling the ball in the end zone. Every time I see it, I see John, I remind him, don't ever do that again. But this was something I think made us realize that we could play with the big boys, we could win the big one.
Well, one thing I remember for 30 years is the fact that on that Sunday call, I called Lindy Infante Larry instead of Lindy, and in our 30-year relation since then, he always calls me by a wrong name, and I always call him Larry. But that was one of the greatest moments in University of Florida football history.
Well, it certainly was, and I think traveling around now to Gator gatherings, they all remember this one. Now here's the Florida-Georgia game. This is 22-13 game, a great victory, and there's Captain Jim Beaver making a sack of Fran Tarkington.
You had a fellow named...
Well, we're coming now to the Florida-Tulane game. Now this is Bob Hoover, Hoover the Mover.
Yeah, but you had a fellow named Miranda that does pretty good blocking here, and then we'll show him in defense. But Bob Hoover out of Jacksonville, Florida, was a great runner, and there's some good blocking along as well as the run.
That's right. This is Miranda making one of the key blocks here on a trap, and Hoover, he certainly knew where that end zone was and made a lot of exciting runs for the Gators. And now we go to Andy Pilney later. Well, here we're going to slow this again in slow motion. Did you, you took that film, didn't you, Dick?
Yeah, that's one of the things we had to do 30 years ago. You know, not only the talent on the show on Sunday, you had to do the photography, you had to stay up all night, but I'm going to tell you, to the Silver 60 gang, it was worth every moment. I enjoyed being part of that era.
A lot of fun. Sometimes a little sleepy, but it was great.
Then you took on Baylor, your first bowl game, 13-12. They were a pretty good football team.
Yes, they were. With let's see, Ronnie Bull and them. I'll tell you, they were tough. I think the Methodist prayers got up there over the Baptist prayers. This was a great ball game.
Watch 69 now. That's Miranda, isn't it?
Right. All right. He was a leader, I'll tell you. He made some great plays, and I say he made everybody play a little tougher, a little bit better.
When we went to LSU, I believe you won 3 times in a row in the Tiger Stadium, and that was unheard of against Paul Dietzel, who won a national championship, and a fellow named Larry Libator comes alive.
The Chinese Bandits, one of the best defensive teams in the country, and here he is on the option. He cuts back after a good block, and one guy lays a hand on him, but after that it's all Larry Libator, and wound up at the half 7-7. I'll have to say this, so it was 7-7 at the half, but going into the dressing room, the little boy up on the stands there poured a little Coke on me and said, "Coach, you know you haven't made a first down yet," which was true.
And it was a 13-10 victory.
It was a big one down in
Silver 60s highlight. Let's go to 1961, and let's pick out some games that we do remember, and I know that they'll love to enjoy again. It was a season of only 4 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie, but you won 3 conference games.
That's right, 3 big ones, and of course this was a tie with FSU when they tore the goalpost down, and this was a team that Coach Ellenson and I were talking about. We lost 14 or 15 boys to academics there. Boys, some of them were real players too, Jack Katz and Odom, and go right on down the list.
Let's look at the rest of the season there in 1961. Hey, see that when any time you beat Georgia. You can accounted for 4 victories, as long as one of them is Georgia. All right, let's go to some of the highlights. Right. And one of the big players that came alive was the number 15, Tom Batten.
Right. And Tom wound up pilot one of the airlines, and this is a Georgia game. Always a big one. What do they call it? The biggest cocktail party in America. But here's Tom throwing a pass to Bob Hoover for a touchdown.
Let's go to Florida, Auburn.
Well, here's the prettiest play in football, Richard, a punt return. And Haygood Clark was one of the best. Watch just as he gets the ball, he takes one little step to our left here and just sets up, there you are, he sets up a block right on the corner, and boy, that is a pretty thing, the sideline punt return. And Haygood was one of the best. And he also intercepted some pretty good passes, too. We'll see a couple of those highlights later.
Well, only 4 victories in 61, but 3 conference championships. And you keep mentioning a fellow named Haygood Clark. Later on, I remember filming him where he was not running the ball back while he was catching passes. But in your era, Coach Graves, most of the fellows many times played 2 ways.
Had to play both ways. And this is why it's hard to really evaluate which was the best team you had. I think the 60 team wound up in the season was probably one of the best teams we coached in this decade. But playing both ways is a different ball game. And now when you go to these specialists and playing, I don't think anybody's ever going to really come back with a defensive record that you had when they had to play both ways.
All right, let's go to 1962 and see some of the highlights. Here's your schedule that we had. It was a 7-4 win, and you got off to a great start against Mississippi State. You went to a bowl. And what I like about as we look at the entire 1962 schedule is that 91% of your guys graduated from college. Let's get that in right now.
Well, we were proud of that. Dr. Rice mentioned that at one of the homecoming dinners about 2 or 3 years ago, and over 50% of them were in graduate programs. So certainly the boys of the 60s, now the men of the 60s, made us all proud.
All right, let's go to the videotape, and you see down at the bottom there, one of the real highlights was the fact that you took on a top 10 team at the Gator Bowl, Penn State. You brought the Dixie flags along, and the great Rip Engel was the coach then, and they didn't know whether they should come down and play you, Ray. They were just a little bit insulted that a 6'4" team was going to play this great team from the East.
Well, we were ready for them, I can tell you that. This was one bowl game that we really prepared for. I went over to Daytona and took the boys over there, and we did I think a good job getting them ready. But there's Bruce Culpepper, captain, and Gelindo Infante was co-captain with Bruce
Larry
Culpepper.
Dupree.
Larry Dupree.
And this is the game Tom Shannon, you know, we just put him into the Gator Bowl Hall of Fame along with you, and this game might have been the reason he's in the Hall of Fame.
I'm sure it had a lot to do with that selection, Dick, and you got to be proud of the Gators in these big ball games, intersectional ball games. I always wanted to play intersectional ball games and get a little more national recognition, and did schedule a couple of Big Ten teams to do that.
Sammy Mack.
Yep, Sammy Mack from Tarpon Springs. Yeah, I'll tell you, he was a great one. Now
I'm very confused. Is that number 14 playing defense?
That's exactly right. Yeah, when Tommy Shannon beat Larry out, Larry said, I want to play defense, and I can't. And listen, he could break on that football. He could play the ball at its height, and listen, he could tackle, as you saw right there. He was a great little player. Now doing rail and real estate over in Lakeland.
And here's the winning touchdown. We've seen this many times. We'll relive it again. Tommy Shannon throwing to number 20, Haygood Clark.
That's right.
For the victorious touchdown over highly ranked Penn State. I don't know. I'm starting to say 1960 was the best year, and I'm turning around and saying this was the best year. There's something for everybody in the Silver 60s, no matter what year it was.
That's true. I think you have to look at it that way. And there's some highlights every season, and some different players, and different players move up and take the spotlight. But we're getting in the heart of it now, and I'll tell you, this one guy that stood out a little more head and shoulders above the rest of them. Caused a lot of traffic jams, keeping everybody in the stands till the last minute of the ball game. A boy by the name of the coach. What's his name? Heisman Trophy.
Steve
Spurrier from Tennessee.
He's coming up pretty soon. But let's continue down memory lane. Let's look at the schedule for 1963. 6-3-1. But something happened. Just see that orange abbreviated point there, 10-6. I don't know if I've ever had a greater moment in my life. How do you describe it, Ray, when we went over to Alabama against the Bear to beat him at home, something that had never happened before, and they had a fellow named Joe Namath? Well,
it was one. We just beaten Richmond, and we hadn't played too well. As you see, 35-28, and people didn't give us a chance. I think this is when you're back to the wall, the character comes out sometimes, and this was a great effort, and the boys had the confidence that they could and wanted the opportunity to play against this number 2 ranked, nationally ranked Alabama team. And I don't know how you explain it, but it was just a great effort, and the big plays by everybody that made this possible.
Here's the rest of the schedule, and look how you finished up, beating Georgia, Miami, FSU. That's got to rank with some of the greatest of the Silver 60s. Let's go to the videotape and enjoy Florida versus Alabama at Tuscaloosa.
Yes, this was one of the 2 games that Bear lost there in Tuscaloosa, and this one lasted about 20 years till his last year of coaching.
Well, we're still enjoying your victory ride over at the Gator Bowl when you beat Penn State. It's worth another look because that's a great memory.
Right,
Here we are at Tuscaloosa.
I'll take that one. That ride anytime. They were pretty good too. There you are. You look a little younger, Richard.
Well, it's a few grays ago, but it's one of the highlights of my television career, being part of the Silver 60s. And first quarter, and Jimmy Morgan comes up with a defensive play as we're playing mighty Alabama and Bear Bryant.
Well, here's Judge Richburg now with a big play. As a nose guard, he was a tough one, I'll tell you. Made some big plays.
At 12 is Joe Namath, and that was 4th down, and they stopped an Alabama drive.
All right. Still in the same game. We're going to the second quarter now. And watch the McClinney kid, Larry Dupree.
Of all you've coached, he might have to rank with one of the better backs you had.
He was. If he hadn't gotten that knee injury and slowed him down where we had to move him to fullback, made All-American at tailback, made All-American at fullback. It was a great, great player.
I have a note here from Tommy Shannon. He says, watch number 12 do the blocking.
Watch him.
Okay, we'll watch him.
Left-handed quarterback blocking, and you'll see him leading the play. Looks like a pulling guard here. I like this. You gotta have that team effort. There he is.
That is a good block.
Yes, it is. And Larry puts it into the end zone.
Now let's go to the third quarter of this great game.
Big sack coming up here, I think, by Sid McLean. he made some big plays too. Let's see if this is one.
I believe we're getting on the other end of a Joe Namath pass, and I believe it's...
Oh, Haygood Clark. Oh, that's where he jumps higher than he ever... Look at this. Look at this. All right, you're right. You had the sequence there. And watch this Jack Katz after Haygood gets by that defensive boy. Here comes Jack Katz with a block right there, that Panama Jack.
Boy, it's a day to remember in Tuscaloosa, Alabama for the Silver 60s. There's no doubt about that. Here's Sid McLean's sack in the third quarter coming up.
This will be the second time. This will be the second sack.
Yeah, I like the way that we have brought out a lot of defense. So many times in highlight shows, and we never did that. We showed the defense as well as the offense, and here's one by McLean, number 74. Watch him.
This is a clean tackle on no chance. That a way to go, Sid. Now you're going to see Dick Kirk. Didn't play a lot of offense, but as we were talking about recently, glad he was in on this series. And this is one of our power formations. And he breaks it with some good blocking there at the line of scrimmage. And watch Charlie Casey, a wide out that puts the safety man on his back.
I don't know how I kept the camera still. I was so excited. Here it is. This is my version in slow motion. And we introduced slow motion during the Silver 60s to the television screen. And this is the great run by Dick Kirk against Alabama. And they beat the likes of Bear Bryant and a quarterback named Joe Namath.
That was the ball game, and it was a great ride back. The students and the fans were out on the runway. We couldn't land, had to pull up and circle again. They had to get them off the runway, and they were on top of the terminal there. This was a great victory to bring back home from Tuscaloosa.
Well, I thought the victory ride you had against Georgia Tech was the best, but I think that suddenly, when this game was over, Ray, you and Gene got hoisted to the players' backs, and I think this was your greatest ride.
One of my daughters said that wanted that picture of that ride, which was in the New York Times on Sunday, and said was captioned, "Guess who won?"
I tell you what, this is just a great, great experience for us to come back after 30 years. It doesn't seem that long.
Oh, it doesn't.
To enjoy some of the highlights and to know of all the successful stories and families that the Silver 60s have produced. That's rewarding, too, isn't it?
This really is, Dick. The friendships that have made are eternal friendships, and it's something to see them all come back, and they get better every year, too. They really do.
Well, let's go again. Now, let's see what happened in 1964. Let's take a look at the next record, and we'll pick out some of the games that we think are the best, and we'll relive it. Mississippi State was always tough.
Boy, they always played
13 over there was something. And then, of course, the Alabama game, 17-14, you were trying to set up a field goal at the end. But you did beat Auburn, and you ended the season with a great victory over LSU.
And that was after the hurricane, and went back and played them while LSU was going to the Sugar Bowl.
Now we're on our way to play Mississippi State. And this was I think it was like 13-13.
13.
And this is where Spurrier came alive.
He uses the clock better than any quarterback that probably ever played here in the Southeastern Conference. And he gets it down in the field goal position for Grubby Lyle, no, we call him Bobby Lyle, to kick a field goal to win this. This is really grudge match.
But what we have to watch here, Ray, even on this fourth down, now we had no timeouts.
That's right.
And that's why Steve is not going for a touchdown. He's throwing to the sidelines to stop the clock so that we can get in field goal range. And I think you and Gene said before we had this highlight version that he was 1 yard out of his range, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, you never knew. I always figured that, challenge him just a little bit. Here he is again, another play. I think this is to the left side this time. All right.
Was Steve at this time calling his own plays, Ray? Was this a pattern that you had?
Somebody asked me if I still coaching Steve a little bit. I said I didn't even coach him when he played. I'd call a play on the sideline and he'd check it off to a better play. But I always felt like a quarterback on the field gets the feel for what's right and what they can do, and he certainly was a field general and a coach on the field.
And then Bobby Lyle gave you another great moment in Silver 60s history. Let's go to Florida and Auburn. This was quite a game, too.
Yes, it was.
Some things to remember. I think Auburn had some pretty good football players.
Yes, they did. Tucker Fredrickson, and they were ranked up right in the top 3 of the nation when they came down here. And we were ready for them. Now, I tell you, Gene had that defense ready for this ball game. We got after Tucker. I don't think he made over 30 or 40 yards all afternoon. But there's a great play by Lynn Matthews, intercepts the lateral. That's a dream for a defensive end.
Hail for the defense here now in this Auburn game, because they were mighty. And here is Dick Kirk intercepting. He's number 25, intercepting an Auburn Tiger pass, and he's headed for, look at that run. He's headed for a touchdown.
Well, if you want to see a run now, watch Jack Harper on this next play, a 74-yard run, and he certainly helped put this game away. This was a great effort against a great football team.
And I'd have to rank him. We've had so many great backs, especially in modern time, but don't ever forget Jack Harper from this era. And here's why we don't want to forget him.
He was a good receiver. Coach Spurrier always said he was one of his favorite receivers, and he caught some big ones for him. But here is this 74-yard touchdown run that certainly made the highlights. I'm sure that was one you had on Sunday, Dick.
Yes, and we probably relived it many times as we enjoy seeing it again and again and again.
Well, this is the second time we had to go to Tuscaloosa to play Bear Bryant. We couldn't get a conference schedule. The only way we could was to play Alabama twice in Tuscaloosa, and we split with him 500, 1-1. But I tell you, this last one we were down on the goal line.
Spurrier almost pulled it out again.
He sure did. He got a pretty good jolt up about 20-yard line on a scramble, and I think he thought he was in the end zone to play before. But it was a great ball game. I mean, Freddie Russell said this was one of the classic games in
Randy
Southern
Jackson,
football.
88, gets the touchdown pass here from Spurrier.
That's right.
And that pulls you within 17-14, and time ran out when you were trying to get down to field goal range. So, another fine season of highlights. 1964, 7-3. You only had, what, one losing season?
That's right.
At the university?
61 season.
During your years at the University of Florida?
That's right. We didn't win them all, but we really had a lot of fun.
Oh, this is great. We hope that you Silver 60 gang are enjoying this, because a lot of people have done a lot of work, especially Gene Ellenson and some others, to put the highlights. And the greatest thing was finding the films.
Yeah.
Because mysteriously, we think that some players might have more highlights than we do.
Yeah, I think there's a few of them that are really maybe in some vault somewhere, but they did a great job, and this is fun for us too. I tell you, this is bringing back a lot of memories for me, pleasant memories, and every once in a while a thorn comes up there.
Well, what they don't know is that when we got off the plane and had to go to Jacksonville and we had lost, you would not let me roll down the windows, and I'd have to hear country western music and have you smoke 2 cigars on the way.
I think that's right.
It was a 2-cigar trip from the airport to Jacksonville where we had to go to work. All right, let's go down memory lane again. 1965, and there were some big wins here. Yes, we went up to Northwestern. It was 150 degrees. I think that's where Spurrier kicked his first 2 field goals.
That's right.
And then the Ole Miss game was a big win for you, because they were a powerhouse in the 65 season.
That's over in Oxford, too.
And then, how about this? You beat Georgia, you beat FSU, and then we go down to play a team that should have frightened us, mighty Missouri, and they were mighty then. Let's go to the videotape and relive some of 1965 highlights, shall we?
All right.
Florida FSU.
30-17 was the score. It looks like an easy ball game, but I'm telling you, with 2 minutes to go, we were behind. 1 point was Steve.
Yeah, it was 17-16. You were behind.
And Steve walked on the field. I was not too happy. I was smiling, and he put his arm around me and said, "Coach, don't worry, we got plenty of time." I never will forget that.
He was even telling Casey how to run his route, then waving him downfield, and there's a touchdown to put you ahead.
Well, it certainly was a great comeback, and this was a Sugar Bowl team that I think my pep talk, it was a tough one. I just said, I don't know how we're going to win, how we're going to beat FSU, but we're going to beat them. It was not easy.
Another highlight brings in number 45, Don Knapp.
Well, in the same game, I think we've got, after the kickoff, Alan Trammell getting into the act. Picks off Steve Hammond pass, and he comes into the end zone. That gives it that 30-17. That looks a little better in the record book. It was a great game. Now,
that was sort of the early years of what is really one of the nation's heated rivalries in college football, Florida and Florida State. Shall we go to the Sugar Bowl? What a thrill the first time you go to this major bowl, and you work hard in preparation. You're playing a Divine team that's nationally ranked.
And Dan Devine, and certainly was a real outstanding team with 3 or 4 that went right on into the pros and made it the rookie year.
And as you get ready to board the plane, there's Coach Ellenson. He works with the defense, of course, during your era and does a splendid job.
There's Jack Card. He didn't even have to stoop down to get in.
Well, New Orleans had to be a different occasion for you. You had never played in the Sugar Bowl. In fact, they weren't playing in the stadium where they play now. They were playing in the Tulane Stadium. But the biggest thing was that you were going to play against mighty Missouri, and you let Missouri just control the first half, and then Steve Spurrier comes back, and in a losing effort becomes the most valuable player in the game.
In the history of the Sugar Bowl, this was a strange game. Missouri stayed outside of New Orleans and trained about 100 miles away, and they were really ready. And of course, they were a great football team, and they did put 20 points on the
That was
scoreboard.
Larry Geiger, Gator defense.
Gagner, yeah.
Steve
was
Height
good.
making an interception.
All right. Then Spurrier goes to work after the half. And it was...
And he finds Jack Harper. Tremendous second half, going for 2 points on numerous occasions and failing, of course, losing 20-18 after being behind 20-0, and Coach Spurrier became the most valuable player. First time in a losing effort ever in the Sugar Bowl. So that was a good year. And,
it was.
Of all the bowls you've played, you don't have a favorite, do you?
Well, I guess winding up against Tennessee in the Gator Bowl, that last game, we didn't win the conference championship, but we did beat a conference champion, Tennessee. But then I'd have to put that right close to the Orange Bowl against Georgia Tech. Even the score against my old boss, he was up 1 on me, and this even the score, and it was a great way to wind up a great season.
You were great friends, you were fishing buddies, but then you defeated him in your opening game in Gainesville, and you wind up his career in the Orange Bowl with a defeat. I don't guess you went and wet the worm too many times after that, did you?
No, we finally made up, though, and did a little fishing even after he retired.
1966, let's take a look at the schedule. Mississippi State victory, of course, another victory over Florida State, 22-19. The rest of the schedule looked like this, and you had some great victories over Auburn.
Yes.
And, of course, the Gators went on to the Orange Bowl, where they're playing highly ranked Georgia Tech, and that brings back, as we take a look at the video, some wonderful memories.
Mississippi State, always trouble for us. They gave us, looked like they just didn't have a lot of respect for the Gators, and they bruised us up a lot of times. But anyway, this is a first quarter when Bobby Downs intercepts a Mississippi State pass, and this was a big one. He makes a great play here to intercept this one too. Way to go, Bobby. Winter Haven kid, and he'll be at the Silver 60's reunion and makes it every year.
Then brings up a name, Red Anderson. What can you tell me about this fellow?
Oh, Red. He was recruited from Miami as a fullback, all-state fullback, and then he wound up second or third string fullback, and Coach Ellis and I, we were talking, he wants to play football. Let's find a place for him. And we put him in at guard, and I'll tell you, he played some great football at guard.
There he goes.
There he is, and there's Steve Height, I think, helping him out a little.
And then number 74, Don Giordano.
This is another real crisp defensive play. There's a future Gators up there, probably delivering Cokes. They're supposed to be delivering Coke.
Another defensive play highlighting the Silver 60's by number 74, Don Giordano.
Another way to go. Right where you're supposed to be, Don.
And then the Spurrier name pops up again in this game.
That's right. And one of his favorite receivers, too, was Savannah Geechee, Paul E. Walson. Paul was one of those boys, Georgia boys, that came down and played some great football for us, and was many times the open receiver. That's the way to go.
Then, number 38 in your memories is Wayne McCall.
Well, this is a great effort. Now this goes to, I think in this FSU ball game, 20 to
22-19,
Right.
but defense sort of helped you win it too.
You better believe it. There's Gino.
I wasn't going to say anything about that haircut.
I think he was trying to tell the kids that you don't let your hair grow too long. Well, this is Florida State, and boy, anytime Florida and Florida State get together, you got a lot of people. Everybody's for somebody, aren't they? Nobody's neutral.
And Wayne McCall was a stalwart player for you all year long, and I think he's a linebacker makes this play.
That's right, and in the end zone, this is a tough pass too. It starts out on a rollout with good protection, and Wayne makes a good one. You have to remember which one's in blue or which one's in the white.
Gary Padgett, who's an outstanding lawyer now, throwing for FSU, and
right.
anytime you stop him, you did a good job.
Well, this is probably one of the most talked about plays in Florida football history, certainly in the Silver 60s. It's a field goal attempt. Here we are.
The late Shug Jordan.
Yes.
Florida-Auburn. Great series.
Right. And there's the shoe, the square toe.
Well, this is the one that might have won the Heisman for him. They said he had a dream. Did he ask you to kick it? Or?
He didn't ask me. He was on the field and got the manager to throw his shoe out. He had a zipper on it and the tee. We've been a lot of stories told about it, whether he thought it was out of Barfield's range. I think the thing that made more sense, he said, you know, if I stay in here and try to kick it, they're not going to rush me. They won't try to block it. They'll think I'm going to pass the ball. But anyway, that was a week before the Heisman voting, and I'd have to say that that influenced a lot of people on how to vote, and it was a great one.
Coach Dooley and Coach Gray's Florida-Georgia Day again in Jacksonville, Florida.
Right. Certainly always a great classic. And here's Graham McKeel. He goes to the 1 yard line. Everybody gave him a little trouble. Why, get in the end zone. One more yard. All right. But Graham and Steve were great. They made up and adjusted a lot of times during a ball game, I'm sure, that nobody knew about.
Well, he had a quarterback named Harmon Wagers, but he could run too, couldn't he?
He sure could. Of course, later the pros found out. But unfortunately for Harmon, he followed Steve Spurrier, and of course he tried fullback one spring. Yes, let me try fullback, coach, and looked like he and Graham McKeel were about neck and neck, and maybe Graham was beating him out. He said, after spring practice, said, Coach, put me back at quarterback. He said, maybe Steve will get hurt.
Good long run, and he did that many times for the Atlanta Falcons too while he was playing in the NFL.
He's a great boy in the Silver 60s. Took a lot of pictures at our reunion every year.
This was fun. We went to the Orange Bowl to take on Bobby Dodd again. You played him twice, and now you're going to have your second victory. And the play in the Orange Bowl, and this had to be a thrill. Let's see, the Sugar Bowl, the Gator Bowl, and now you're in the Orange Bowl. When you're in the state of Florida, to be the host team there is really an honor.
Right, there's Coach Ellenson coming back home to Miami. There's a younger Steve Spurrier.
Tell me he's gotten just a little gray. Make me happy. Is there a little gray in the head coach of Florida?
I don't know. I'll tell you, he's something. I have to say something. Our cheerleaders were great, weren't they? They all through the 60s there, I'm telling you. They were great, and they're friends now everywhere we go. Some of them will come up and say, I was a cheerleader in the 60s, and there's Governor Hayden Burns and his lovely wife, Mildred. He was certainly a big Gator fan. Here he is, Larry Smith, on his way to touchdown, and his pants will wind up about half-mast. I know this is one that we were a little bit embarrassed about, but we were also very, very proud of.
92 yards, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 92 yards.
An Orange Bowl victory, so you've got victories in the Gator Bowl. You're one of the winningest coaches there. You're in the Hall of Fame there. And you go to the Sugar Bowl. You have a victory in the Orange Bowl. Wow, there's some real great highlights in this in the Silver 60s era.
Oh, yeah, it was certainly something we're all proud of, and it was a real pleasure to have the opportunity to coach some great, I say boys, now some great men. And they all, I think, feel a responsibility and return the opportunity they had to play at the University of Florida, and that makes me very happy too.
I like the way they're still backing the University of Florida, not only in football, many of them are contributing in other ways in education, financially, and that's really great. All right, 1967, let's take a look at a 6-4 record and pick out some of the highlights. You got off to a good start against Illinois, Mississippi State. You lost to LSU, something you hadn't done during your era. Tulane game was a good one for you, and was Vanderbilt. Let's take a look at the rest of the schedule. And then, of course, you just have to be happy anytime you beat Georgia, and you beat them 17-16, and that sent Dooley home very unhappy. Let's enjoy more of the Silver 60s.
Well, we, of course, lost a lot of key boys off of that 66 team, but 67, Larry Rentz is our quarterback, and he was, of course, all-state and I think all-American quarterback from Coral Gables High School in Miami, and he certainly was a leader. Now here you see he can run. Listen, this is a great run against Tulane here, and you can't say that didn't make the highlights.
Well, one thing about Rentz, I never saw anybody with any more energy. When he wasn't running or throwing or quarterbacking the team, he could have gone over and been a cheerleader.
Yeah. He finds those boys protecting him, fullbacks and offensive linemen. He was smart.
This was a big victory, 30-0, because this is when Tulane could play some football.
That's right. Andy Pilney
People
did
seem
a good
to forget
job.
that Vanderbilt and Tulane were some of the powerhouses in your era and before that.
Well, and here's Tommy Glenn. They got him in. He was a reserve tailback, but Tommy gets to take one into the end zone against Tulane. 30-0. Victory. Well, where do we go next, Dick?
How do you describe Jim Yarborough?
Oh, boy, I tell you, he made some great plays. He ran over a few people after he caught the ball, and he cleaned off the sidelines here in one pass here in the Miami game.
We're going to get proof of that now as we're down against the Hurricanes again, down in the Orange Bowl. Charmin Harmon and Richard Trapp.
Right.
Pretty good receiver.
You better believe that.
Mike McCann out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
Played some good football for you.
Yes, he did some coaching over there. Yes, he's always at the Silver 60s. Brian Jetter, Wayne Barfield. Take those headgears off, you can see who they are. Pretty good-looking boy when he takes his headgear off. Tommy Hungerbuehler from Miami. Plays a pretty good guitar sometimes.
Wasn't that?
There's J.D. Pasteris.
Yep.
And Whitey Graham McKeel. One of the big men, and Smith Barney down in Tampa. There's Brian Jetter. And Wayne McCall, a real, that's J.D. right there, Pasteris. Without his uniform, without
playing against Charlie Tate at the University of Miami, and we get a sample of why number 88 was such a feared football player for your Gators. Jim Yarborough.
From Arcadia, Florida. Now he does a pretty good job upstairs with the TV and the monitor, and records a lot of current Florida football highlights.
Oh, he's become a Pat Summerall, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Here's Big Jim. Watch you clear out.
He thinks the defenders are on the sideline.
Yeah. Oh boy, he was a big man.
Well, you certainly have great memories and outstanding citizens who played football for you. And let's go to Florida-Georgia game, shall we?
All right. This is Mike McCann, I believe, catching a pass in the first play from Larry Rentz. Number 89, I believe, yes.
This was a close game, and you're trying to get back into the football game because Georgia's playing pretty well, too, and they were leading you early in the game. But this particular pass, why, it gives you a chance to get within striking distance, and then Richard Trapp, this has got to be the run of the century after a catch.
He really does. We started counting them.
1,
2, 3. Well, it's going to wind up 6, I think, if we count them again and again. But this was a great one. And he made another run that really set us, got us in position to set up the field goal to beat the Bulldogs.
Yeah, this is the other play they made. Now, this is when you had to get down within field goal range. Time was becoming a factor.
That's right.
And they were going to depend on Wayne Barfield to do the kicking. And he comes through with a field goal, another thriller in the Ray Graves, Gene Ellenson era, winning this one 17-16. I don't know, I'm getting confused now, Coach Graves. I don't know what to say is the greatest moment. It started out with you beating Georgia Tech, your great game in LSU, winning 3 straight times over there on the road at where the Tiger Stadium is, with this bunch doing that. And then you went down to the Orange Bowl and you made a miraculous catch there. Now we just have a 17-16 that sent Dooley home very unhappy.
Well, this is you can get a little better. The older you get, the better you get. Every reunion we have, it seems like the boys get a little better, and your children can tell tales I hadn't heard before. But this is something I think that makes football great. To reminisce and relive some of these highlights, and a lot of them were just kids weren't even born now that can relive and see what their daddy did for the Gators.
Well, after 30 years, we'll just say that everybody was All-American and Spurrier won the Heisman. All right, let's take a look at the 1968 record and see if we can pick out some highlights there.
Oh, that Air Force game. This is the first game in the Tampa Stadium, and this was part of the deal to get Tampa Stadium built, a feasibility study. The Gators would play some games there. Now, on the kickoff, a Brown boy named Brown ran for a touchdown. Martin ran about 80 yards for a touchdown.
The rest of the season looked like this after he opened up with the Air Force. He had a good year going, and of course the big one was down in Miami. We defeated the Hurricanes again. That was some kind of rivalry. All right, here we go. Anxious fans. We're now having Florida play Florida State in the third quarter. We call on defense again. I think in the Florida State game and Florida rivalry, there's been more defensive plays in your era than ever. That's Jim Hadley making the stop.
Right, from Tampa. Jim was one of the key players in this season. And of course, this was probably the best defensive football game I think we played during the 60s.
Yeah, this made Gene Ellenson a hero here with his goal line stand. Second down stop. Everybody makes the stop. And then tell us about number 69, Ray.
Oh, you better believe that. This goal line stand, of course, and then shut out FSU for touchdowns.
That was Bill Dorsey.
Well, that's right. Jacksonville boy.
And here's fourth down.
It was fourth down. Yeah, fourth. They go for the field goal then. Here's a great play on third down when pass is knocked down.
That was fourth down, and that did end the goal line stand there.
David Gesquire, I think, was the one.
And down in Tampa, he opened the stadium against the Air Force. Steve Tannen returning a first half punt for a touchdown. I believe he went on to have a pretty good year, didn't he, of pro football with the New York Jets, I believe?
Yeah, then he went to Hollywood or California, and I don't think he's been back since.
Now 1969, and let's see some of the moments to remember. Houston, Houston, Houston. Can I say more than that? You had...
Oh, I would say more for fans as I travel around Gator gatherings and reminiscing. Bring this game up about more than any game in the 60s. And of course, you look at the record and go down through the season, there was some exciting football. The Super Softs of that year were something that was a great bunch to coach and a way to go out and get a chance to play the conference champion in the Gator Bowl, University of Tennessee, my old alma mater.
Yeah, that had to have mixed sentiment for you. They were the SEC champs. You were the captain of the team at Tennessee.
Yep.
Now you're going to defeat them in the Gator Bowl.
You better believe it. I wanted to beat them bad so I can go back home and enjoy visiting in Knoxville. But here's some highlights. First, we go to the Tennessee Gator Bowl game, don't we? Yeah.
Youngblood makes a big play, but first we'll have him warm up. John Reeves is here, and he's got Carlos Alvarez with him to play in the Gator Bowl, and Carlos has to go down in history as one of the great receivers and runners you ever had. Mm-hmm. And there's Hollywood.
Yeah. Steve Tannen.
All right, let's get started with Youngblood. What a great career he had. There's the governor,
Claude.
And the president of the university.
Right, Stephen C. O'Connell. There's the president of the University of Tennessee.
What a career football young blood has had, huh?
You better believe it. Saw him in the airport a couple years ago and came up behind me like to knock me through the window. All right. This is an interception by Mike Kelly, who is certainly the most valuable player in this ball game. He made that key interception, and then Coach Ellenson and...
Do you teach block punts? Steve Tannen blocks this one, and Mike Kelly, who was most valuable, goes in for the touchdown.
Well, this is something we were always talking about. You just got to have a knack for wanting to block kicks and to get in that kicking zone where that ball is being kicked. Steve was one of the best.
Let's salute the defense again, because when Tennessee had a fourth down, why the Gators came up with another goal line stand in this portion of the game to stop Tennessee, and you beat them 14-13.
A great runner there.
In another one of your great victories. Gator Bowl victory, and you've had numerous of those, and congratulations on you and Tom Sham both being in that Bowl's Hall of Fame. But I guess if we wind up the great things that ever happened in Florida football history, we have to go back with the Florida-Houston series. I heard one fella say, I've been waiting for this kind of football offense all my life. So you got a fella named John Reeves, as we wind up your victory in the Gator Bowl, and Carlos Alvarez. And against Houston, one of the powerhouses at that time, they put on a show. This is their first pass and first catch, Ray.
Right. This is on the second play of the ball game from John Reeves to Carlos Alvarez, and this was one that I think we had worked on. They play a tight man-to-man defense, and I don't think any one man could cover Carlos Alvarez consistently, and he was behind him. This was a great offensive show. Of course, the final score was 59-34, but at the half and even in the third quarter, they sent word down for me that they wanted to keep the ticket windows open after the half. They were driving in from all over the area there, wanting to see if this was for real. But it was
Here's that play again. Look at the moves that Alvarez had.
He was something. If he hadn't gotten that knee hurt, I still have said many times he would have probably gone on to a great professional career. He just had a knack of getting open, great hands, and knew what to do after he caught the ball.
Jimmy Barr interception?
Yep, that's a big one. Another TD.
That's got to be the greatest satisfaction for a defensive player to intercept and go into the end zone for a touchdown. Yeah. And then you had a great player from Daytona Beach named Tommy Durrance.
TD, and he certainly held some records in Florida for a while, and the running game, this really gave us a good balanced offense, running and passing, and Tommy Durrance was the reason that gave us that balance with his great effort, and he and his family are certainly looking forward to seeing them at the Silver 60s, and there he goes. And Norm Carlson always had a knack of putting 33 and those double numbers on who he thought might be a star. He came out pretty lucky, though. Let's see, 33 was Lindy Infante, and then Jack Harper and Larry Smith. Well, he did a pretty good job.
What fun it's been, but now someone else with 70 victories had something to do with all of that. Probably your right-hand man, Gene Ellenson. Right.
As we've talked about, that's something that's like a brother and a friendship that we've enjoyed through the years, and still Gators, and I think we have to thank him, and he's written a poem. He's always making great speeches. Listen, I was pretty smart. If I couldn't make a speech, I hired somebody who could. Gene was certainly great with the pregame pep talks and everything, but he wrote a poem about the men of the 60s, and I think we'll all enjoy listening to that again.
January to December.
To the men of the 60s. Here's to the men of the 60s decade. They were mean and tough and unafraid. Here's to the men who won 70 and lost a few. The men who raised on high the orange and blue. Here's to the linemen. God bless them all. Here's to Norris, Collins, Seals, Tom Smith and all. And Miranda, Beaver, Slack and Patchen too, and Big Ol' Waking and our Ferris, just to mention a few. Then there was Lasky, Peters, Holland, and Dean, Big Punjab, Travis, Little Ensminger, who were keen. Add, of course, the Hogg brothers, Colson, Benson, and Preston. Sid McLean, Geo, and Randy Jackson, whose laurels we rest on. Don't forget Katz and Odom, and King of the Bees, Dennis Cheddar. Here's to Gagner, Murphy, Matthews, and Richburg. None better. Then we had Bill Carr, our leader, who did the job. Dennis, Dorsey, Youngblood, rough as a cob. Here's to Red Anderson, the Williams, Dan and Don real mean. Big Jim Hadley, Skip Amelong, Kim Helton, and old Max Dean. Here's to the scrappers, Scrivanik, Buchanan, and Brad Powell. There was Maggio and Griffith, who never threw in the towel. Here's to the linebackers, not big but without fear. Guys like Culpepper, Purcell, and Red Dog Kelly were here. Remember Jimmy Morgan, David Mann, and Steve Height? Then there was Petty, Card, and Billy Joe, who were tough in the fight. Here's to Wayne McCall, Don Barrett, and Super Jew. And don't forget the Sheik, Gesquire, and Mike Kelly, too. There were others, I'm sure you knew, who did their thing for the orange and blue. Here's to the backs, God bless them, too. O and D, there were more than just a few. How about Infante, Newcomer, and Starling the Mover, Sam Mack, Dupree, Skelly, and a flash named Hoover. Here's to Haygood Clark, Bennett, and Trammell, they flew. Downs, Ely, Tannen, Kirk, they'd knock you askew. Jack Harper, Larry Smith, Mike Rich, they carried the ball. Blocker McKeel, and touchdown Tommy Durrance got the call. Here's to the quarterbacks, the guys who ran the team. Start with Libator, the Roach. He was a dream. Followed by Tom Shannon, brilliant and daring.
Then came Steve, whose comebacks were nerve-wearing.
And here's to Egdahl, Wages, and a blade named Rents. They did their thing and gave a fit to the defense. There was McDaniel, McIntosh, and Kay Stevenson, too. Finally, there was Reeves, who set records when he threw. Here's to the receiver we remember as well as any, from Peake, who caught some, to Carlos, who caught many. Here's to Richard Trapp, a runner beyond compare. Here's to Casey, smooth, and he had short hair. Here's to the specialists. They kicked, returned, and punted. This was before the soccer guys swiped and grunted. We had Shade Tree, whose extra points were the nation's best, but somehow in the Sugar Bowl, we let him rest. Here's to Grubby, he had a talented toe, and to Seymour, he kicked in his socks, you know. Grandy was dandy, and Haygood brought him back real fast. Harvin, Hoover, and Trapp could elude your grasp. Finally, here's to the coaches, staff, and all, and to the John Wayne movies we saw every fall. Here's to Ed Kinsler, the Maryland Terrapin, and to Pepper, the Georgia Tech Gremlin. To a Kennard named Grumpy, and a Thompson named Stumpy. Here's to Brown, Green, Dunn, Rabbit, too. Also McGowan, Fuller, and Eibner, a worthy crew.
Here's to Ott Mooney, Fred Pancoast, and Jimmy Haynes. And here's to the coaches who suffered projection room pains. Here's to Sarge, Cunningham, and Brady Greathouse, who had to listen to all you guys gripe and grouse. Here's to Coach Ray, our boss, cigar and all. He lived and died with us and saw us through every fall. So raise your drinks on call. A salute to the men of the 60s. May God bless you all.
What a great tribute to the men of the 60s. And we again have to thank Wayne McDaniel and David Houts and, of course, Gene Ellenson for doing all the work. All we had to do was come in and relive old times. Now, if there's any contribution I've made to the Silver 60s, it's this. I carefully edited the film before the Sunday show, and even after a loss, the alumni didn't get upset. They couldn't figure out how we ever lost the game. My second point is that I feel that I had something to do with Steve Spurrier winning the Heisman Trophy. You've got to remember, Steve, you never threw an interception on the Sunday show. And let's see if I got it right now. Larry, Lipitor, and Lindy Infante.
You got that right.
Thanks for including me.
Dick, it's been a pleasure to be back on the set with you again and enjoy highlights of the Silver 60s, and we look forward to seeing them live down at the Silver 60s reunion.